We're getting an update today on the hundreds of African migrants and asylum seekers who arrived in the GTA last summer. Many were forced to sleep on downtown streets due to a lack of shelter space. Chris Glover joins us now with more on this. So, Chris, we heard a lot about the plight of these men and women a year ago. What is happening with them now?
Yeah, we heard so much about it. We saw those images of so many people sleeping on the street there in front of that intake center in the downtown. A lot of those people have now moved on and found housing, but the problem still remains for so many people who continue to try to come here to Canada. Refugees still make up about 4,000 people of Toronto's shelter system. So certainly it is still a crisis, not just for the refugee system, but it's also citywide an issue as well, because those spots are desperately needed as well by Canadians who have been here for years, obviously. So the advocates here today had a couple of specific demands. I want to get into those in a moment, but first I want to introduce you to one of the refugees who came here to Canada last year. Diana Mathenge came from Kenya. And Diana, tell me, what was it like for you to come here to Canada to see that we didn't have shelter systems prepared? We had all those people, hundreds of people sleeping on the street there on Peter Street. What was that like for you to see and experience?
It was really hard because when we were coming, I think there was a lot of unrealistic expectation. So it was really, really hard. And us coming, when we came, that's when everything was being figured out when we were here. So it was not easy. We got a church shelter, but it was really hard to see my brothers and sisters sleeping outside. And it was not like really perfect in the church shelter. I was just privileged that there was a roof under our head.
Well, and I remember seeing some of those images of people who were sleeping in church basements. They were sleeping on chairs. They were having to shower with, hundreds of other people there at the same church shelter. I mean, what was it like to live through all that? All those issues, they take a toll on you mentally. But like I keep saying, we had really proper structures and people who we knew we can always run to. And if we didn't have those people, I think we would easily break down. Okay. And so, Diana, now you have shelter, you have a space to live, and so that's a success story, certainly, of one of the people who came here. And as she was referencing the church where she stayed, you're the person who is the executive director of that church, and Nadine Miller. I'm curious, what do you think when you hear that story of someone who came here, who saw all those issues, and was able to finally find housing now a year later?
Well, there's so many others that are looking for housing now. And like Diana, that was a success story. But the other stories that are not successful, that's what we're fighting for now. Right. We need the government to step in. The cities are overwhelmed. And we need we need the federal government to step in now and give the funds over now.
And you're calling for two specific things, the reception center and something other than the Canada-Ontario Housing Benefit. Can you explain why those two things would be helpful?
The center needs to be there to grab the people when we can't, because there's so many people coming in. And it needs to happen now, not later on, and it needs full capacity. Then when it looks at the COB, it doesn't work right now because there's not enough. So they need to carve out something new. We did it for COVID. We were able to carve out something to help the people. And if we can keep a basic needs, we have to move it up than what's there now, because basic needs is not enough to help them to survive.
Okay. Nadine, thank you so much for telling us about the demands that these advocates had today. Diana, thank you for sharing your personal story as well. And Dwight, we'll send it back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Chris.